Hello, everybody. This is Sean from Easy Street Billiards, and Vic's in the background, chilling back there. Probably very few people will be watching this live because the Mariners are about to go to the World Series. Uh, Either way, I'm going to be playing pool and talking about pool for an hour, and then we'll find out what happened. Today, the first topic that I want to talk about, and if y'all get on the stream a little bit later while I'm still on, of course, feel free to comment, and we will discuss anything that you'd like to talk about. That's what this is all about. I'm going to hit balls if we get bored about talking until something comes up. The first thing I wanted to talk about, and this might be lengthy, is learning to trust yourself in pool and ways that you can see that you are trusting yourself, see that you're not trusting yourself, and ways to identify that you are trusting, that you're working on that process, and ways to see instantly when you're not doing it through paying attention to what you actually are actually doing instead of trust, i.e., second guessing or just being distracted enough to not be aware of what you're actually doing enough to be able to rely on what you're doing enough to trust it, which some of it comes down to focus and some to emotional concerns. I'd say maybe I'll throw some balls up here in a second and kind of like go over what I think of is when I think about trusting your stroke, trusting your plan, trusting your game, and just trust in general, is like trust is more about a lack of any of the things that take away from your ability to just operate without wondering if you're doing the right thing. You never know, really, if you're doing the right thing. That's the whole paradox, I guess, of a lot of it is that you're acting with incomplete information. You don't have a full complement of perfect skills to utilize to solve the problems that you have. Mostly, the situations that you're in will have challenges that you're not completely prepared to jump in there and accomplish to the fullest that you'd like to, and all these other things that, can just take away from your and chip away at your trust level in yourself, And I think that if you take a step back from all that stuff and just focus on one foot in front of the other and what that looks like over the course of a journey of learning how to master something to the level at which you not only can execute what you're trying to do pretty often, pretty reliably, pretty repeatedly, but also when you can change things and make little adjustments, knowing that it's not always going to work out exactly the way you were hoping, but knowing that without that experimentation, that it's difficult to continue to develop your game and thus master the task, which is really where the trust is 100%. When you have achieved full mastery, of the situation, then there's nothing to think about. You trust everything you do because you know the answers to all the questions that can come up, and there's a lot of games where that might be possible. I don't think that pool is one of them, and that's what makes pool interesting. Really interesting is that, even the most routine layout, if you make one focus error or, you overroll your position slightly, it changes everything to where now you're basically in a completely different scenario than you had thought of. And if you're not ready for that and you don't expect that to happen, then when it does happen and you're really feeling like it shouldn't be happening, that can nickel and dime you down a little bit with your trust level in yourself, not realizing that that's just actually normal, everyday occurrence in the game pool where just a little bit of a roll of the ball, an inch there, a half inch there, a little bit of extra side spin that you didn't intend. All that turns what looks like a roadmap into a lot of different, interesting shots that you may or may not know how to come with. And over time, you got to develop the ability to do that. Oh, we got a comment in here.
Oh yeah, it's KB.
KB. Oh, nice.
Yeah, he says, "Hey Sean, it's been great watching your games over the last 6 months. I've got to get back into work, so I'll catch this on the replay. I'm looking forward to the next game."
Nice. Good to hear from you, KB. Hope to see you again soon. We may be planning a trip back home for Vic, so we'll see. Back to the trust thing. So let me throw these balls out here. And I'll give you kind of a rundown of the way that I look at things. As far as trusting, like ways, what does trusting your stroke look like and what is not trusting your stroke or not trusting your game. I think that if you don't have a clear process, then you're unsure of what you're supposed to do next, at least some of the time, and you're operating on instinct, and you're operating on just trying to maybe grind through it, mentally work to try to solve these little problems that you have that wouldn't be there if you had your process locked in. So the number one thing I would say to develop trust in yourself is to continue to work on your process, and only that until you can remember it well enough to where you can summon it at any time to be the main, this is what I'm actually supposed to be doing at this particular moment based on whatever the actual situation is that you're dealing with. Like if I'm practicing, for instance, which is what's happening right now, my main focus will be whatever my focus for the practice is. So say I'm playing the Ghost and I can play ball in hand. So then I'm going to try to run these balls out, and what I'm trying to do, maybe today, I want to spend a little bit more energy working on the timing of my stroke. So then what I'm going to do is, in order to focus on just maybe the tempo of the stroke, we'll just do a rack like that. I'm going to focus on the swing. So then what I have to do then is prioritize that above everything else and just work on that. And that forces me, in effect, to trust all the things that I cannot focus on because I'm focusing on my swing tempo. And by focusing on my swing tempo and not deviating away, I'm developing trust into other things. The one thing I'm actually not trusting in is my swing tempo, because that's what I'm focusing on. You're trusting everything else. When you're focusing on something, then you're in control of it somewhat. So the other things that are happening, you're not really in control over. So those are the things you have to trust. If you're actively shooting a shot, and then the thing that you're focusing on, you're saying no to that, that's a whole nother thing. That's like you're shooting yourself in the foot more than trusting yourself. You're actually sabotaging yourself somewhat, and maybe it's along the same line, and it's just further down is sabotaging. Lack of trust leads to sabotage, maybe ultimately. I don't know. So if I'm just working on that, then I'm going to just focus on the shot that I want to shoot. So for this shot, I'm going to try to play my cue ball to right here, because I don't want to get over the 8, because I'm going to try to probably just punch over to that side. If I was a little bit steeper on the one, maybe I'd try to play further over, but I can hold it here. So now I plan my shot, so now I know exactly what I'm going to do. I know the cueing, roughly the way it's going to look, and then I'm going to try to use a certain stroke, a certain tempo. That's what I'm trying to develop for this particular outing. So then I'm just going to get down on the shot, let all this happen, and then now that I'm on my swing tempo, I'm going to just swing the way that I wanted to. And I hit it a little bit too hard, came over here, doesn't matter. You just keep going. And this is just a process thing. My process is I'm going to play a precise position for my next shot, and when I shoot my shot, I'm just thinking about my tempo. So I think I like this angle so that I can come across. See the ball roll, etc. Get down, swing tempo. Right? I got the angle I wanted. I really couldn't punch out and get the way I wanted to without risking over rolling, so I just sacrificed and knew that I'd be shooting out of the pocket to get a little bit further. It's okay, so I'm going to punch across. See, a lot of this is like by communicating what's happening and all that, I'm learning through the process of doing it. So I'm like, even though the things that I'm micromanaging are, being worked on, I'm also identifying that the things that I can't focus on because I'm focusing my awareness on the specific aspect of my game, I'm actually trusting that it's working, and by actually shooting the shot and making it and doing relatively what I'm doing, I'm actually proving to myself that I should trust myself, because without thinking about what I'm doing, it's happening, right? So partly, if you get in the habit of understanding that you're actually trusting yourself to do so much of the activity that you can't really control it all at once. You cannot micromanage everything. You cannot have your awareness on all the things at all the times to make it all happen. It's all a development of time. Over time, you develop the skill in each little part of your body to move it the way that it needs to move in sequence and it's like in symphony and all together in order to make that happen. And then by using your awareness, you can like finely tune and like sculpt a little bit more closely an area of future growth. And the rest of it is just kind of chilling and working together as it does the way it does when you're just sleepwalking, basically. You're just doing all the stuff. And by realizing that's what you're doing, then when you go to a match, you just play and you're focused more on keeping your physiology right, or whatever you're doing. It doesn't really matter. It's like more about like once you understand that you can do the shot, it's more about letting yourself understand that you actually have to trust yourself to even do anything. And then now it's just like, well, why haven't I just trusted myself more? It'd be simpler because, when you have the trust in yourself, you don't have the emotional punishment that comes from failure, because part of trust is knowing that it's like, well, for me at least, I'm trying to be aware of what happens, and I'm trying to be aware of what my body's doing and what my mind is doing, so that when I act, I see the result of the action, and then I can use that information based off what I was trying to do to move myself forward in the next shot. So there's really no like worry so much that I'm not going to trust myself. It's more about knowing that I'm emotionally in a place where I can hear myself think and hear myself and see myself move, so that I can more consciously be aware of what I'm doing. And then I will make sure that I'm following my process, because my process is, that's what you do. Your best process is going to be the thing that you trust the most. Like, you will stick to that above everything else. So once you have that guiding light, that best process in your mind of like, okay, this is my best process, as long as I can stick to that and just keep trying to adhere to that best process, nothing matters. That is all that matters. The winning doesn't matter, losing doesn't matter, making a shot, getting shape, none of that matters. It's all those things are going to happen in the midst of while you're focusing on the process of the thing that develops. And that's how you learn how to trust yourself. It's like, it doesn't matter if I dog this ball, what matters is that if I say that I dog the ball, it's why did I say that I dogged the ball? Is it an emotional thing? Is it a mental thing? Was it the shot that I thought was easy and it actually wasn't easy because my knowledge is not really sufficient, So then it's like, if I'm saying things like negatively about myself, that don't have to be that way. Well, it's like, if I learned from the shot, is it really dogging it? It's more of like, well, I learned for next time that I'm going to be more successful, and by reframing and seeing that, really paying attention to what I'm saying and doing and thinking and how and all that, then I can easily learn over time to trust myself a little bit more, because there's really nothing that's not happening that I can't see. The thing about pool is like, well, it's all right here. There's no deception. happening when I shoot the shot. The math is clear. If you want to shoot this shot and go to here, there's a certain physics involved. If I don't know that or I can't accomplish it, it doesn't change anything. You know, whether or not I trust myself to know the physics well enough to be able to execute on them isn't even important. You know, I don't know the exact physics of this shot, you know, and I don't know if I can accomplish it perfectly either. However, I can see the balls kind of the way they need to go, and I can hit the ball kind of to make that happen. And, you know, and the fun part of the game is finding out if it's going to happen when you do it. You know, partly if you frame it in a way that you don't have to trust yourself because there's nothing going on that needs trust. It's just messing around and playing and trying to get better. You know, then you can frame it in a way. That way is another way to frame it that can help you trust yourself more. And I think a lot of these different things are like maybe apply to you, maybe do not. Some of them apply to everybody. Some of them do not. I'm speaking more from my own personal, like, you know, the way that I see things, my opinion about the way that I've learned to trust myself more, you know, is that it doesn't help anything to double think yourself and overthink things, you know, but it takes time to learn how to make a choice and a commitment without perfect information and then just rely on the fact that you're going to forgive yourself later for not doing it as well as you could have, but also give yourself the attaboy of knowing that if I never shot the shot in the first place, I never would have found out what was really going to happen if I just did the first thing that I thought of, right? If you always do the first thing that you think of, and then you learn from that, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh, well, the last time I just did that, a bad thing happened, you know, so now I'm going to do this instead. That leans you and it gets you moving towards the period of time where after you shoot a shot and you get a result that you didn't like, now you will automatically see the thing that you could have done better, and then you won't even really think about the negative thing because you've already like instantly saw what happened. You instantly saw what needed to happen and what you could have done differently, and then you just forget about it because it's already gotten developed, the trust where you're like, I can trust that I'm seeing exactly what I did wrong. I'm acquiring the information, like maybe the table is a different, you know, the physics of it, like maybe it's warm or cold or wet in the room, or it's old cloth, new cloth, you're not quite used to, and it takes time to learn and get used to that, or you know, your body is not warm yet. You haven't hit enough balls to really feel good, so you shouldn't necessarily expect yourself to perform at the top level. But a lot of that's just an awareness of self, you know, awareness of all the different things. You know, the more awareness you have on what's going on, the less distrust really exists because it's so much of it's already like accounted for just by continuing to add awareness to everything you do. It's just more trust. So like I said before, you know, on this shot, just coming over here, I don't need to do anything other than just see what I'm trying to do and visualize it as much as possible, and then I just get down and shoot the shot. And I'm working on my tempo and my strokes, so maybe I'll be trying to like pull back slow, slight pause, and then come through with like a deliberate follow through, and then see if I can just achieve kind of a consistent stroke for every shot that I shoot on this rack. Pretty good. So I think a lot of people, you'll think, if I'm going from the 4 to the 5, they'll think, oh, I just got to hit it and kind of come to this area right here, because then I'll know I'll get a shot. And if I overroll, I'll get a shot on the corner. And if I underroll, I'll get a shot in this corner. And then all three of these different positions will lead me to the 6, right? Because they all will, ultimately. So if I don't pick one of those, now when I get down on the ball, and I'm deciding like exactly what speed to hit at, if I'm trying to spin the ball at all with English, right or left, or draw or follow, and now I decide at any moment in time, maybe I should try to like play it to this spot. Now, what's happened is you're actually redesigning what you're about to do in the middle of the shot, in the middle of the motion of what you're doing. So now you actually have to use the position of your feet and your body that already was set up for a random, like this positioning here, and then now you're having to be more specific about your cueing, because now instead of just making the ball and zoning it, you actually are trying to play an exact position, which in turn has an exact physics requirement associated with it. So now when you're down on the ball, you're like, oh, I need to change something to get to a specific spot. And maybe initially I was cued to just, I would have hit it here if I had just hit it the way that I was going to hit it. Who knows? But now that I'm planning here, it's a little bit different. And if I have to make an adjustment here, now I'm having to rely on my initial setup for this shot when this is the shot that I'm at. And your body knows where you're lined up to do. You already had a shot set up to happen, and then you got more specific in the middle of the process of doing the shot. And now what you're forcing yourself to do to be accurate, completely accurate, is you're going to have to adjust your cueing to the exact cueing that's necessary for that shot that's about to happen now, because you've chosen it. And a lot of times what will happen is you'll feel like you're not on, because you won't be, because you started out in a random place with you're getting down on the shot. This would all be happening while I'm down here. By the way, I'm not going to do that forever because it's tiring to just sit there, and that's part of it. And then your body really wants to reset. But if you practice doing it this way, you'll be forcing yourself to just live through the fact that your body really wants to reset. And it's not like your body's revolting, because it's a habitual thing that you're enforcing over time. Every time you do a shot, everything that you did is like a neuroplasticity thing, right? Your brain learns how to do it more efficiently the way you did it before that last time. Each time you repeat the same process, you're building connections that are hard to break. And because of that, it's important to study what they are so that you can make sure that the correct ones are being grown, those correct connections are being grown, and then the ones that you're like, oh, I didn't even know that was real, you have to spend energy changing that to the new thing and grow that connection stronger to eventually overcome the one that you're using now. You know, so one of the things that I think people have trouble with is being patient enough with themselves to actually learn how to trust yourself. You can either do it by going so fast through it and you hit 20 million balls instead of 5 million balls, you know, and then through the extra 3x reps, you're like learning more than the other guy. Or you can, if you don't have all day, you know, you can just plan your shots a little bit more, work on learning how to plan better, and then you know you're cueing more easily. So like if I'm trying to go here, I can see the cueing of that, and now when I get down, I'm just going to get down on it, and I'm just going to swing through and hit it, right? So if I'm trying to get here, that's pretty good, right? Because now I can just draw over for this 6 ball. And if I got, you know, other spots you might have got tricky, you know, but that's why I chose this spot. It's not really important so much, you know, but by waiting until I got the shot completely planned and see exactly what I'm going to do, and then now, once I have all that done, so like this shot here, I'm going to punch and come across and try to end up right here. Because what I'd like to do for the 6 to the 7 is just play here, come into the rail, and back over, ideally above the second diamond, because if I come into the second diamond, then now I'm coming, and it's not so important because the 8's on this side, but if I needed to move the cue ball off the 7, then maybe I'd want a different angle coming into this rail so that I'm coming into a different line, right? So I don't really want to be on this side, because now the 8 is potentially blocking. I might come here. I can't really go forward because the 9 is there. You got to be over on this side. So that by planning that now, I'm like, okay, well I know by doing a little bit of deduction here what the right shot is for me. So that's an element of trust that I'm adding. Well, I've done all the work to know. And this is in practice, and obviously I have all day here. But partly is by waiting until you've decided exactly what shot you're going to shoot, and then you get down and shoot it. Even in a match, a serious match, you still have been forced over the reps of doing it in practice the same thing that you're going to be doing when it's really important, ideally. And that's why practice is tough, because you want to just hit hella balls, but that's all you're doing is enforcing hitting them exactly the same way that you did it, however you did it. Part of the trick of practice is you got to like learn how to advance your technique and make that the primary focus, and then learn how to make that fun also, rather than just mindlessly banging at the balls and then enjoying watching the balls run around and do crazy things, because that's also fun. But when you're trying to control the balls, that's not what we're doing. So I'm going to use a little bit of draw, a little bit of right. And like I said, I'm going to try to get right here. So I'm not going to use like a lot of draw. It's more like power, because I need tangential velocity and just enough draw to turn it so it's not going south, and then a little bit of right English to turn it a little bit up this way to get it to check, in case I come up a little bit like steep on it and not straight across. The spin up this way could help me. And it feels to me like on this type of shot, a little bit of right English is helpful to counter the squirt, or the swerve, I should say. The squirt, then the swerve. So just nice and smooth. See, I hit it too full. It went boom, 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 and then back up this way, and the cue ball scratched instead of hitting here. So if I would have hit it thinner to make it, I would have hit below the side, and then it would have came across. So really on that shot, I just hit it too full. Or the deflection or the squirt was more than I thought it was, and that made the cue ball squirt out fuller to do the scratch. So that's just information that I'm using, because I've literally only hit like 10 balls. And now I'm embedding the habit of like planning the shot. It doesn't matter what happens, that's not the point. The point is that when you're doing the thing, the habits and the processes used to do it are what matter, not the result. The result is just the indication of what you need to make changes of to do better the next time. Every shot's just a shot. So I'm still trying to get to that same place, because the ideal positioning is the same. So I'm just going to use this natural stun angle, which goes basically to here, with just a little bit of draw. So instead of like going at that angle, I'm just going to come at some shallower angle. And this is just draw with a touch of right. And it doesn't matter so much that I didn't get all the way to the spot. The line is good. This might be even easier than that. Like a diamond and a half, a foot and a half to 2 feet to me is like pretty much ideal positioning of distance between the cue ball and the object ball for every shot that I want to shoot for the rest of my life. So I try to play every shot like that if I can, because then you get your consistency of the distance of the balls, so you don't have to worry about your distance vision failing you when they're always the same distance away. So here's just low right. I want to hit a second diamond and come probably here. And again, we're just working on nice smooth take back and then follow through. Yeah, I want to come a little further, but this is fine, because I'm just going to play my cue ball up, and I don't want to go past the side, because then I'll be going that way. If I can, I would be almost straight in, slightly to the one side, but really almost straight in is good, because if I go too far, I can still use this rail with English to come to this side if I come too far. If I come a little short, then I can just cut it and float up this way. So really, the shot that I always like to do is a little bit short, because I want to go that way mostly. If I get a little bit too far, I can get away with it, but too much too far, then I have to play 3 rails around, and that can be tricky too. So I'm going to play 2 right here. Actually, more like this, I think. So I can't cue low as much as I'm on the rail, so it's a little bit more high English. This is just mostly right, but a little bit more like level cue and is not. You have to like level cue as you follow. See, in here I'm good. So now I actually can do either shot. I can cheat the pocket and come to here, or I can go to this rail and come out. And for this shot, I'm a little bit easier to cheat the pocket to the right, so I'm actually going to play to this pocket and then play to this spot right here. And this is just high and a touch of right. And all this is just like building the process so that when it's a match and I'm really under pressure in my mind, then I can stick to like, I'm always paying attention to like where my cue ball is going to go on every shot no matter what. So even on this shot, I'm playing my cue ball to a spot. So for this shot, why not? I'm going to play it to freeze to the rail right here because that's the natural roll. Then that tells me the stroke that I want to use, so I can pull back, nice transition, and then try to see how close I can get to that spot. So that's pretty much, I don't know, do you have anything to add to the trust thing, babe? No?
Right now.
Yeah, there's a lot to do. A lot of it has to do, I think, people, like, you got to eliminate things that will make you distrust yourself, really. You know, if you want answers and that makes you trust more, which I think is typical for most people, then you need to ask more questions and need to answer them. You know, if you have questions you didn't even know that existed until you're about to pull the trigger on the shot, and all of a sudden now you think of them, that makes people jump up on the ball more than anything, because you're like, what? Should I shoot that shot now that I'm actually swinging at it? And then, you know, that's a question that you've asked yourself, you know, and then if you don't answer it, you'll never know the answer because the situation will move past you. You know, one of those things is like when you think of a question, you gotta listen to yourself. You gotta hear your inner voice, like saying, "Hey, I need to know if that ball goes, or I need to know, you know, what side of the ball I need to be on so that I can play my position to this pinpoint spot that I need to get on, or this maybe a breakout or some other thing." And if we don't address that, we're not going anywhere. And you know, as you get better, you have to solve the problems that are in front of you. You know, and some situations you might not be able to get out, right? Like, you know, you get something like that going in your game, you know, which how often does that happen? It's every day. You know, balls will be tied up, you know, and people like just running balls without thinking, oh, what am I going to do? You know, that's fine. You know, to me, I'm going to try to break that ball out if it's my inning, but I know that where the balls are at, I'm not going to like try to play a breakout shot that doesn't give me a chance, you know what I mean? So if I get to a spot where I'm like, oh, I can't really get out, you know, maybe the three is over here, you know, and then you're like, doesn't even matter where if these two balls are gone and you have ball in hand, you know, you're not going to get out there most of the time. So it doesn't really matter what you do other than you leave yourself a place for a safety. And then depending on how quality your safeties are, you're going to play shape for the particular spot to play your best safety potential. You know, which on this shot, you know, maybe you're going to play for like a cue ball down here, just stop the stop shot and leave your cue ball right on the bottom of the 8, or this side. You know, this is a little trickier because if you're going to shoot this shot and you're going to bank the 4, you typically need to put a little bit of follow to stun it forward because you really want this ball to go away and then have the 2 come to like under here. You know, if you hit it hard and it comes out this way and you just stopped it, now you're selling it out, right? So situationally, you'll have to learn how to trust that you're going to make good decisions, and a lot of that has to do with just like, well, I got to answer my questions, you know. Yeah, trust is an interesting one. Like I said, I think for me, once I started really being like, what is it causing me to not trust myself? Oh, another thing that I wanted to mention about trust is building the habit of trust is like everything that you do to yourself that makes you like second guess yourself. If you can eliminate that, that's really like the addition of trust. It's like, you know, if there's 2 ways to shoot the shot and you are shooting without thinking about it, or you haven't decided, and now you get down on the ball, you know, say you're like on this ball and there's 2 different positions, and you haven't quite decided what you're going to do, and then you get down. Now, most of the time, you're going to be in a spot where you can easily distrust yourself because not everybody knows, but you would know that you haven't really made a clear decision, and that expresses itself in the fact that your shot is probably not going to be a clear shot. It's more likely a combination of two different shots that need to be one shot of thought in order to go. You know, you might end up like hitting it too full because you decided to try to use draw, and now that you're down on the ball and you're deciding to use draw, you're probably wind up thinner on it than you would have been to draw it. So now when you're actually drawing it, you're going to hit it too full because it's just the way the balls react is different with draw and follow. And you have to just know that it's not the same shot. You have to get down on the ball, and this is my opinion. I'm sure there's way better players than me that can get down on the ball and then adjust for all the different things once they make decisions. I just think that it makes more sense to just make a clear decision and then shoot a specific shot every time because we don't have to be down on the ball the whole time. Now, if there's a shot clock or something like that, then I'd say you probably got to practice, making hastier decisions, which would even lead you more towards just making a clear decision and shooting, because then you'll have even less time, to second guess yourself out of doing it. You're just going to be like, it won't even matter what you do. It's going to be more then about just being able to clearly decide what I'm going to do quickly. Like if I want to play speed pool, then I'd just be like, well, what's the shot? Well, I can come over here, because then I know the 3 is there, right? And then as soon as it stops, I already know the positions that were likely from the shot before, right? Without trying to get too crazy, I'm just going to give myself a decent shot, come over here, right? And just try to do things as efficiently as possible. Underrolled it, so now we're in trouble already. I couldn't quite fill the stroke for that, but I'm not really a speed pool player. So here I'm just going to try to pocket speed the 4 in. I don't even know where it's going to go, once you lose control. So for me, it takes time for me to see where the balls are going to go. And it's one of those indications, if I'm shooting fast, that means I'm probably not visualizing as clearly, because it takes time to see the balls roll. The way I do it in my mind, I haven't figured out how to fast forward the movie. I try to watch myself do the shot as clearly as I can before I do it, and then once I kind of have seen that, then I try to do it again. So it's like a rehearsal, right? So if I haven't seen myself completely shoot the shot, then when I get down on the ball, I have to try to invent some of that, and that's going to cause a little bit less clarity happen. And that's just the way that I play in my mind. I'm developing more visualization ability, and because of that, I have to use it. And if I don't work towards that, then it's, I don't want to use hit it soft, hard, medium as my speeds. I'm just thinking, okay, well, I see myself hitting it this hard, that's how hard I'm going to hit it. And that's the trust factor. If I don't do all of that, then I can't trust that it's going to happen, and then typically it won't happen. I think that is pretty much it. If anybody has anything to add or questions, obviously, please comment below. I'd love to talk for another hour about this some other time. Is there anybody else that posted? I saw another comment.
No, it was
Was that
just
KB again?
That was me.
Oh, nice.
I was commenting. Just responding to KB and then also posting the school. I will say that I feel like having a process for trusting your shot or adjusting is important, right? Because I feel like when I didn't have a process and I would just get down on the ball and then I would just shoot all willy-nilly, and then sometimes I'd go with my first instinct and sometimes I wouldn't. And then sometimes when I'd adjust, I'd make it, and sometimes I wouldn't. And so it was almost like you never know when to trust yourself and when not to. So
Right.
I feel like that's why I like having a process where you say, no matter what, I'm going to shoot this shot. And
Yeah.
this is the shot that I'm going to shoot, because then that shot and the way you shot it is direct feedback that you can put back into all your
Exactly,
toolkit
yeah,
kind of thing.
right? Yeah, I mean, by by creating a desired outcome and a desired process by which you achieve that outcome, it's just more clarity. It seems like what you're saying. You know, it just makes it. I mean, and it makes sense to me too. It's like it's a rational viewpoint, I think, to have like, okay, well, if I'm gonna keep doing the same things over and over again, maybe I should like pay attention to how I'm doing them, so that I can, you know, see how it is and get used to it and get comfortable with it, and then also, you know, through my intelligence over time, I'm going to try to get better at it, because I think that's a natural thing for people to do, is try to improve their technique, you know, and develop, you know, and it's not so easy to do. It's not like that. It's just one of those things by like trying to, you know, develop your process, even by just, you know, having an ABC, like, you know, it's simple, something as simple as, and this is probably more difficult than most people think it is. If you, every single shot for the rest of your life, you picked an exact position for the cue ball to end up after you shot the ball, you know, this is on any shot, offense or defense, you'd be surprised how often you don't do that, even saying that I will do it. Because obviously, why wouldn't, I mean, it'd be an easy intention to make, right? I'm going to play position on the cue ball for every shot that I shoot for the rest of my life. That's like, why, that seems like an obvious one to me, you know, and then yet some people don't do that. They just hit the ball without thinking of it, because they don't think necessarily as deeply as they could. Maybe they don't trust themselves to even be able to accomplish the beginning of it, and then now they're like failing later on, and then they're okay with that because they did the one thing that they tried to do, which is make the ball, you know, or maybe, you know, like not scratch or whatever, because some shots you're just trying to survive, you know, and that's all fine. You know, I think that eventually though you got to realize is that like we're going to keep coming back to the table, you know, we can learn how to do better things for ourselves, and a lot of that is process oriented thinking. You know, it's like, well, how is everybody else doing it? You know, it's like, well, mostly I think that if you look at as players increase in skill in general, and I wouldn't even say in general, I would say pretty much every one of them, if you start watching the highest level players, you'll see that it's very difficult under most circumstances to tell the difference between one shot and another when you're watching a good player shoot it. Obviously, the very difficult shots in high pressure situations, they're gonna fall off their like routine a little bit to, you know, because they're even in a situation where they're being tested. Most situations that we are like, you know, deal with as regular players, you know, aren't as much pressure, because if we tried to like play in the championship tournaments, we wouldn't even do well necessarily until we reach a certain skill level. So we're applying, you know, and learning from where we're at. But I think that as you see the higher level you get, is it's more and more consistency, and the only way to achieve consistency is just to have a process. You know, if you get up in the morning every day and you have a list of things that you're going to do every day, that's going to have a rough process to it versus someone that just gets up in the morning and then you have no plan for the day and you have no goals and no, you know, maybe things will happen, maybe things won't happen. If you're feeling good that day, things will happen. You know, if you're feeling bad that day, you might make different choices. You know, but if you have a list of tasks that you're going to do today, you know, feeling good or feeling bad is not as important, because you know that at the end of it is by like just following your process and trying to follow as many of these steps as I can. I'm going to learn to do it better every single day, and then my process will continue to get better and will be easier to accomplish through just the habits of doing it. You know, yeah, and this, you know, and a lot of it's just come down to awareness of like, oh, what am I actually doing? Do I actually have a process? You know, and then what is it, and what would be the best process for me becomes a good question to ask at that point. You know, and that opens the door to a whole, you know, new version of your pool game if you haven't really considered what happens once I learn how to make the ball. You know, and like where do we go next from there? You know, and some people are satisfied with that, and it's understandable. It's not easy, just to learn how to make the ball repeatedly, you know, and adding that process will just give you that consistency over time and just working on your process. In fact, even adding elements to your process to help you learn is important too. Like for me, every time I shoot a shot, because I've done the work of seeing the position in my mind that I want it to go, when I shoot the shot, I'm gaining information. I'm like creating a little miniature like experiment or a test for myself. And my whole goal for the shot is just to run the experiment. I shoot the shot and I see how close I could get to that spot. And then the information that I need to know, which is like, was that a reasonable shot? Was that not a reasonable shot? You know, how closely did I perform it? Should I be practicing it? All those are answered as soon as you hit the ball, you know what I mean? And that makes it a little bit more fun if you're willing to come back out here on your practice days and do this work, you know, learn those things. Anything? So that kind of segues to like the second half of what I was going to talk about today. What time is it?
Okay. 7:47.
All right, so we got a few 15 minutes. So what I wanted to do was talk a little bit about my short-term practice routine that I'm developing for myself. I think the level of game that I'm at right now, my defensive play and my moving and my kicking and banking is pretty reasonable. So I'd say my safety play is pretty solid. And what I want to work towards for my own practice game is working on my offense, particularly like learning how to break and run more often. So one of the things that I do when I'm practicing is not a lot of drills and whatnot, but I've been just racking the balls and breaking and trying to run out, like break and run practicing basically. And that's the drill. It's like, can I break a random rack of 9-ball and run it out without missing, hopefully, make a ball in the break. That's part of it. I'm like teaching myself how to break better. And if I don't make a ball in the break, I'm just re-racking and then just running and then doing it again. And then I'm going to try to score, see how many break and runs I can get in a certain amount of time, because I don't have like all day necessarily to play. So I might pick like an hour, just break the balls for an hour and then see how many runs I can get. And then that's going to be my practice. And then what I'm going to try to do is, over the period of time that I'm practicing that, if I can identify some obvious like weaknesses in my position play, then I will work on those specific weaknesses to advance myself. And then also one of the things that I'm going to work on in the short term is like practicing my jumping a little bit. I've been mainly focusing on like visualizing my kicks, visualizing my banks, but I want to spend a little bit of time on jumping, so I'm probably going to be doing that here and there, just to get my stroke back. I used to jump really well when I competed a lot, but I started kind of focusing on more kicking, because I like one pocket is really my favorite game to play, and jumping's just not as relevant. But I've been playing a lot of rotation lately, a lot of 8-ball, so I'm going to work on those couple things. I think it's important to you got to vary your routine to keep it interesting, but you also have to practice things that are actually going to help you with the thing that you're trying to get through next, if that makes sense. Like, what's the next thing? It's like, well, if I can trust my offense more, that's going to be nice. And I run the balls pretty good, but I can always get better at it. And I think that my break can get a little bit more consistent too. So it makes sense to do that. If you're just doing drills all the time, your break is not going to get better through the drills. So you got to understand, it's like if you're going to compete, you got to work on your break. So you got to find time to do that. I'm trying to like have the best of both worlds, where like I'm really trying to simulate a competitive environment where I'm going to be, getting, if you're playing 9-ball, a lot of times it's alternate break. So the alternate break format, you have the first chance to break and run. So I think that practicing breaking and running is probably the best skill that you can develop long term if you want your Fargo to go up. And then what you got to do then is like, okay, well, what's stopping me from breaking and running? Is it my break? Is it my shot making? Is it my cue ball control? what is the thing that is holding me back the most, and then work on that as you learn how to break and run. You know, I don't think it has to be complicated what your system is. You know, you don't have to, you know, you can if you want to, but you know, you set up like 4 balls, you know, an inch from the rail, you know, an inch from the side, and you try to get shape on them, you know, like something, you know, like a drill like this, you know, where you're like playing something like this. It's like you're trying to get shape on these balls and get really tight. And it's like, well, you can do that, you know. You can play these where it's like the shot's super tough, you know, and you're playing to a specific spot, you know. But to me, that's not as useful for like most people, you know, when you can't break and run 5, 6, 7 balls in a row. You know, you don't need to be practicing running these 4 balls. This is really tough, you know. It's like beyond, I think, the level of most people. And like, how often would you necessarily be shooting this drill, you know? I may have gone too far here. I needed that softer. See if I can do it. Pretty good. Anyways, to me, you know, finding the balance of like what's something that I can practice that's going to help me the most is the question I'm always asking myself. You know, as an adult, you know, I don't have as much time to just hit balls and get those reps and then not have every rep be meaningful other than just to get reps. You know, every rep is meaningful, but it can be more valuable if you add intent and you work on specific targeted skills, you know. So by identifying, okay, what are my real goals here? It's like, well, if I'm trying to compete at the highest level, I need to be able to break and run a rack consistently, more than consistently, like all the time that's possible, ideally. And I think that once you've reached, you know, a certain level, that is the aspiration. Can I break and run a rack? Then once I've done it, how can I do it more? Because then once you start really running, you know, 2 or 3 racks in a row, then it gets to be like, well, now it's almost like, well, my skills are there. Now it's like, can I emotionally hold it together long enough to string, you know, 15 to 20 randomly placed balls in a row, you know, because you're breaking, running the balls out, setting it up, breaking again, making a ball, running balls, getting out, and so on and so forth. You know, and top pros are like running 10 plus racks of 9 ball. So who knows, maybe they're making 1 to 2 balls in the break, so maybe they're running like 70 to 80 balls in a row with breaks in there, you know, making balls the whole time. That kind of consistency, that high of a level of repeatability, being able to make 70, 80 balls in a row playing 9 ball, you know, that's not easy to do. We're working on, like, you can run, you know, break, get position on the 1, you know, just breaking the balls and learning how to get position on the first shot, it's in its own thing, in its own right, is like a skill that takes years to develop. Then once you can make that, now you're like, okay, well, what shot am I, you know, typically faced with on the 1 when I get that consistency? And then you just add that skill set, you know, and then like, then there's so many shots you'll see that just don't come up so often that it's not really that important to like master right away. You'll know when it becomes important, because then when you go and you play, you know, in tournaments and competitions, then you'll start seeing a whole nother layer of different things you need to learn how to do. You know, it's like, oh, if I would have, you know, been able to XYZ, then I would have gone past, you know, this guy, because that was the situation where I screwed up and it was over, you know. So now you have that. You can add that into your training. But it doesn't take that long to learn those shots once you have, you know, a repeatable stroke. That's the thing. It's like, how many times would I have to set up that 4-ball drill with these balls a half time and out? Like, I got 3 of them, You know, I could have probably made that 7 without playing shape for the 8. But even that is like, this is pretty tough. And there's obviously tougher drills than that, you know, but it's like you just keep doing it. Eventually you'll learn that skill. That's not the hard part. It's more about, okay, what is it that I'm missing, you know? And being able to consistently run several balls in a row and be able to have your process and remember your process is an important thing. You know, by practicing like breaking and running, you're like practicing running the balls out the same kind of way in the randomness, sort of the randomness that will happen in a competition. You know, and that's a huge thing at my level, and I think most people could use a little bit of practice doing that. I used to play the ghost more and just take ball in hand, but I think now I've advanced beyond that. Even though maybe I'm not playing the ghost and 9-ball, playing ball in hand, I can probably beat the ghost, you know. But now that I'm like, well, if you can beat the ghost doing that, you should be doing it tougher. So I think the next move is to see if I can make a ball, and run out and then beat the ghost like that, which is tough. So I have to be able to break and run more than half my racks, you know, which is tough if I'm only making the ball, you know, 75% of the time. Then that's really difficult. You know, now you're like losing 25% of the games before you even start. Now on this table, mostly I can make balls on the break almost every time if I rack the balls perfectly and have it all set up and then hit the ball the right way. But even then, I'm still developing consistency, so that's something I'm working on, you know, and it's going to happen, you know, over time. Nobody else got on?
No, I think it's just us now. Well, somebody else was on, but they didn't ask any questions, but then I think they're gone now, and then we've got 2 minutes left.
Okay, well, that's going to be it for us then. If you made it to this point in the stream, really appreciate you. Anybody that pops on later in the future, put a comment in. We will see it. We will respond to it when we see it. And you know, if it's an interesting question, it can definitely be the topic of conversation in the future for anyone that's interested. If you have any interest in the school group that we have, it's going to be in the details of the group and all that. I'm using that as a coaching platform. What's that, baby?
I pinned the link in the comments.
Oh yeah, it's in the pinned comment, so you can just check that out. I encourage everyone to join. It's just the beginning of the group. We're adding to that, and as we continue to grow the coaching brand for Easy Street Billiards, we're going to add more content there, and there's eventually going to be a whole probably A to Z type school there for anyone that's in there, and it's going to be a free group for some time, and then later on we may change that depending on what happens, because we may end up using that as our coaching platform for the lessons and for the pool school that we're developing. So I appreciate and love everybody that's out there, and I'm not sure what's happening with the Mariners, but go Mariners!